moved into the role of producing Sunshine State Games and the Florida Senior Games before transitioning to the CVB world, where I led the sports and events team at Visit St. Pete Clearwater. And most recently, I find myself now here in Las Vegas with MGM Resorts.
Sweet. Julie, if you want to take it next.
Sure. And by the way, I should have gotten my background ready. I was like, Amanda and Matt are rocking it. So next time. But Julie Haferkamp, a senior account director, and I'm with Mosaic. We're a North American integrated marketing agency. My career started out 15 years ago. I've always been agency side, but really worked my way up from the field into the office. So that's one of our, if you're on the agency side, that's always can be one of the things when you make that transition. But so my first job ever was as a Missouri lottery ball. I was in the field and I did a huge, massive tour, then started to get into marketing in Chicago, multicultural marketing, and really have been at Mosaic the last 10 years. So right now I oversee our CPG division, help support that, and our integrated campaigns.
Awesome. All right, Amanda?
That made me laugh. I similarly was a brand ambassador long ago. I started my career at an experiential marketing agency in Toronto, and then I transitioned over to the role I'm in now at the Canadian Olympic Committee, or Team Canada, and I've been here for about 4 years, and I'm excited to share more with everybody about my experience so far.
Awesome. And Matt?
Everybody, I hope everyone is well. I'm Matthew Ratner. I'm the Associate Director of Sports and Entertainment Tourism at the Greater Miami Convention and Visitors Bureau. It takes up a lot of precious space, real estate on those reports there. But basically, all those words means that we bring sports and entertainment tourism to Miami. That actually brings visitors. I started my career in Tampa, Florida, at the University of South Florida, actually as a journalist for the newspaper there, for the student newspaper, and then moved over to the other side of in the media relations department there. And that's where I got started in sports, moved over to the East Coast of Florida, worked for the Miami Dolphins, Florida International University, and then met my wonderful family here now at the CVB. Been here about 8 years and loving every bit of it.
That's awesome. And I think the cool thing to point out with our panel is that everyone has, a good base from different backgrounds, but a lot of that is based in experiential and getting those real boots on the ground, and then being able to go into, call it more of a strategy-based role. So that's very cool that everyone shares that. I'm also just realizing my screen name right now. I'm not Avish. I know it's a super shocker to everyone, so that's okay. The recording will say otherwise. Anyway, getting into it. So I'll start a bit broad. I just want to ask each of you, what do you believe goes into executing events? And if there's any skills or traits that you find helpful. Again, as we go through this, we'll scale a bit more specific, but anything that comes to mind immediately in terms of your day-to-day role that helps you execute. Matt, we'll go with you, and then we'll go reverse order.
I think the best course of action in executing an event is to have great partners. Especially down here in Miami, where we have great partners within government, within all of the professional franchises, the colleges, universities, restaurants, hotels. So I think it starts that's your base of starting an event, because without all of those individuals, you really can't have an event. You need a venue, you need all these other resources around in the destination for us to put on the best possible event you can, just like a Super Bowl or a college football national championship, which we have coming up in a few weeks here. So I think really starting with getting to know all and building those relationships with all of your local partners, whether it be governmental or the venues or the hotels, is really the base that you should start out with.
Awesome. Amanda?
I'll take a different angle and maybe answer more from a doer or somebody who might be executing or working in events. I think one of the number one skills that's really important is to remain solutions oriented when you're working through your planning. So things will always go wrong. And I think a skill that's harder to teach is remaining flexible and adaptable and calm in stressful situations.
Julie?
Sure. So I'll answer from the agency and I would say brand side, at least from my perspective, what makes, start to finish, I look at objectives and strategy and measurement first. And that wouldn't have been the first answer I would have given as I started my career in the industry. I would have been so ready to, Amanda, as you said, execute, and I would be all about that. And that was what was so exciting to me. But I think as you continue to progress and do different things, don't get me wrong, execution is still my favorite part, but where we typically are making sure that we spend, or I spend the most time now, is on that upfront strategy, is on what is going to make an event successful. Our making sure that everything is aligned to what the client, the brand, or other partners need. So that, to kick it off, that's the most important thing for me. And I would say, this sounds really cliche, but be kind. I cannot tell you in 15 years how many people have circled back, how many people we have had connections with. This industry is so small. So as I look right now, like Sarah, we, the kind of connect through Brett. I just learned today, Amanda, we've got the connect. Some of my Canadian counterparts are working with the COC. So we are always just one connection away, and always one phone call away from a good solution or a new friend.
That's awesome. It's a small world indeed.
Yes.
It definitely is. And I would just to add, to what everyone else has said, kind of the holistic approach. I feel like having a clear vision, having a can-do attitude, and great partners. Obviously, I think those are like pretty much the basics. And always try to be being a problem solver and not a roadblock. So many times the quick answer and the easy answer is no. And I don't like that. And I've never operated that way. So that's one of the things that I've really kind of harped on and tried to bring everywhere that I go, is that can do yes attitude, and finding those ways and those solutions through the problems.
Yeah, absolutely. And I definitely agree. I think, in any capacity and no matter what industry, and it's all about asking those questions, right? Not only internally, but then also when it comes to working with teammates, working with other partners, other moving parts in play. That does bring to mind, I wanted to touch on this, and this is a very, I'd say it's a very wide ranging question in a sense. There's a lot of possible answers, but Julie, touching off of your point as well, what would you each consider KPIs that you look to obtain in measuring success of events and when you're laying out that strategy? And I'm curious if that's more of like if that's a quantitative blend, if you're looking for certain metrics, if it's more qualitative and helping to build the long-term success of that event, or with partner relationships. So just curious of what you're looking for and what you hope to achieve in planning for events. Amanda, we'll kick it to you.
Sure. It definitely depends on, this is probably going to be everyone's initial response. It depends on the event and of course what the objectives are of the event, based on how you measure against them. But I can give a recent example of something we're working on right now that's cross-functional throughout our marketing team. So we have certain brand objectives, partnership objectives, and digital objectives. And there'll be a mix of quantitative and qualitative, and they're both measured through research, a combination of research and evaluation of changes on our channels, as well as partner satisfaction. So that's an example from an event we're working on right now, but they vary and change depending on what event you're operating.
Sarah?
I couldn't agree more with Amanda. I know, when I was in the CVB world, we would, some of those KPIs would be brand, exposure for the destination, heads and beds, those types of things. Here at MGM Resorts, a lot of it is, revenue generation, and how do we transfer some of that into the other facets of our business, whether it's, the gambling, the casino, the entertainment, all of those types of things. So, to echo what Amanda said, for me, my experience has always been, it just depends on each individual event, and, making sure to identify those ahead of time also helps to ensure success as well.
Absolutely. Julie?
Sure. So I think ladies touched on a lot here. So I'll just try and think of anything, not think of, but build on it. I would say the key thing is pre, during, and post. So a lot of times making sure you're looking at that entire path to purchase or the consumer activation and making sure that you have measurable touch points beginning, during, and after. It's not just enough to say, hey, we just did a ton, passed out 2,000 samples, right? Way back in the day. We have to make sure that how are we engaging them at the beginning, getting awareness, or if that is a measurable tactic, we're engaging them and then making sure that we stay in touch with them as they leave or as they go their other ways. So just that's a quick example of one, but all depends on the vertical, what you're looking at. And yes, quantitative and qualitative. Typically for me, the bread and butter is sales. At the end of the day, what can you prove out that you did? That is the cure-all. So really making sure that if we can't get sales, we've got purchase intent, or we have a lot of really great metrics to give back. Because so many times amazing activations aren't determined by the sweat equity that we see and we love, but it's a one-page recap at the very end that somebody higher up is going to sign off on it and say, yes, you're approved for next year. So making sure you have what is in mind for them, what success looks like there all the way up the chain is pretty critical.
Absolutely.
I think working on the desk side, Sarah hit the some of those touch points with economic impact, with heads and beds, making sure your key stakeholders are happy. But one of the biggest things that we use to measure the success of an event is if people will come back to the destination, whether it's participants that want to stay a little longer from what they're doing, or the visitors that want to stay in the destination a little longer. So that's really how we like to measure it if they had a great time.
Yeah, absolutely. Spot on. I am noticing the theme that and that makes sense, that each consideration in those KPIs definitely depends on event per event. Have you found any common trends amongst, let's say, events that are more niche versus ones that are larger scale and a bit more encompassing, or is it truly, every single one is its own case and it really just has to have those conversations once they arise? If anyone wants to take that one.
I think it really is case by case basis. I mean, we've run events, from as small as a youth soccer tournament all the way up to a Super Bowl. So there's a lot of different measures, when you're dealing with participant sports, or you're dealing with a spectator sport, where you're going to have 70,000 people in a stadium. Obviously, we know that's not happening at the moment, but we'll get back to where that is. So it all really depends on the event, the type of participant, the type of client you have coming in.
Awesome. Cool. All right.
Covered it for everybody. That's great.
Yeah, I was gonna say no. I let it breathe for a second. No problem.
I would say, I'll just build it. It's a yes and. So yes, there's basic things that you will look for. There's elements that if you were acting in the digital space, you will commonly look for these metrics. If you're activating somewhere here, you'll look for these. But really you have to make sure it's tailored, because I think one of the biggest mistakes we can make is we're moving quickly, or something just got greenlit for the next year and you just pull those same metrics, or you just pull the same things and you're not advancing the ball. Because that's kind of, it's lazy event marketing. It's lazy experiential. You're not thinking of other ways that you can continue to tweak it. So you just have to make sure that everyone, even if it's got the same or elements of it, you're tailoring it to the current campaign.
Absolutely. Alrighty. Switching gear, going a bit further into, going through that process. I'm curious what that looks like, and keep in mind that I'm sure there are a lot of folks on this call who are either not in the event space, or perhaps don't have that, may not have that scope. Perhaps they're maybe in more activation, it's more in partnerships. There's different, of course, all different folks on here. I'm hoping to see if you guys are able to help spell out, I guess, a bit what that looks for in terms of initial conversations. If it's with, if you're looking internally, how are you setting up those talks? Like, this is what we, you talked about the strategy, right? Like, this is what we look to accomplish. And then you're working with other departments. When do those talks then go externally to the partner? Are these all intertwined? Like, I'm just trying to get a good sense of the timing of when you work from internally to externally, and how that all comes together, or if it's, really fluid.
could start for this one. So sometimes we work on events with partners that we already know who the partner will be. And other times we'll be developing an event where we need to bring partners in. We're a little bit unique because we're a private not-for-profit and we're considered a property. So it's probably a slightly different angle than the others on the call. But we start all of our both events or really any marketing initiative with a brief, which may be something we all have in common. So we lay out what are our objectives, our strategies, our tactics, some things like what do we want the consumer or the guest to think, feel, and do when they're going through the experience. And then we'll also outline within the brief how we'll measure success once the concept has been defined and we actually begin execution. So we often set that out right from before we may even know what the event is, some ways we'll measure success, and then to Julie's point, evaluate if they still make sense and see where we're tracking from beginning, middle, and end. And it'll be a mix of what our objectives are. And in the case we're working with a partner, we have to consider what our partner's objectives are as well and ensuring that we're achieving both. So that's a bit of a high level answer from our perspective.
I would agree with that, and also add, kind of going back to, those key skills and things that we had talked about at the very beginning, generating that clear vision for the event and having those and having a clear line of communication and a clear communication plan, I think is valuable here, because once you identify and create that vision for the event, you will naturally go through that process of internal and external conversations as you develop it, and the communication plan kind of weeds itself out. So it's kind of a product of going through that planning and visionary process.
Exactly. I mean, we as a destination, as a CVB, we travel, all around the world, trying to meet different people to bring different events to Miami. Some of the greatest plans always start at at a meeting at a bar somewhere, possibly, or just a casual conversation that goes on. Hey, we should probably look into doing X event. And from there, you bring it back to your team, talk about what benefits it has for, specifically for us as a destination. And when doing an event or bringing an event somewhere, there has to be some equal opportunity for both parties. Because if it's a one-sided opportunity, it's really not going to work out. It might maybe for 1 year, but I don't think it'll work out long term. So there always has to be benefits on each side of for the event.
And I would say, at least from my perspective, agency side, if you ask for typical, it would normally start with a brief. So we are asking or giving a brief to our clients or whoever we're partnering with, generally consisting of 10 to 15 questions, not meant to be too long, but it includes a mix of both strategic and critical thinking questions. So we use it to actually get back the strategic questions. Of course, we want the ones that are very finite, that, hey, we're going to execute in X market. But really, when we see we want to drive this in sales or we want to get this in brand awareness, we will then use it as a filter to view the rest of what they're sharing. So is that recommendation right? Is it a mandatory? Can we propose other alternatives? But from there, you get your baseline, and then the plan kind of filters out, but it's always looked to with a strategic lens and ultimately measurement in mind.
Absolutely. If you can speak to the difference between, if you're proposing a new event or under a new format, versus one where it's like the annual such and such, and you're looking to create fresh spins on it. How does that ideation process look?
For us, it still starts with a brief. So whatever it is, even if it is recurring, because you don't want to do the same thing every year, you evaluate, are your objectives still the same if it is an annual event? And is the way we've done things in the past the right way? So we would still go through a somewhat similar process to evaluate if it's the direction we want to continue moving in, or if we want to evolve and change, which would be usually the goal. So for us, it starts in a similar fashion, for sure.
For us, I think it depends on where it's coming in from. If we say new, it depends on if it's a current existing client or we're submitting an RFP or trying to win it that way. But normally then it will come to us in a brief, or this is what you have to do, and submit back. If it is something that we are, annualizing or memorializing, that will start with us to really have a kickoff meeting and make sure we're reevaluating what we want current time frame or next year to look like. So, but again, I think, I couldn't agree more. It's like, where are you always leveling up? Because it's a marketing, it's a pride point that we have to do it better than we did the year before. The worst thing is because we've always done it that way. You can't do that.
Awesome. In regards to experiential, and I'm sure there can be a whole nother conversation, a whole nother panel just on what that meaning experiential is going to manifest moving forward. But I suppose in regards to how it's been done during your careers and how you have helped to activate it, what does experiential, what does that mean to you? And is that always looking at how can we involve each of the five senses? I know this, of course, is a conversation. It changes from time to time. It depends on the brief, depends on any partners involved. But what does experiential mean, and how are you looking to walk someone through the experience and coming away with, wow, that was a heck of an event?
And I think exactly what you said, it's got to have a little bit of a wow factor. I mean, for example, what we've done in the past a few years ago is, obviously you can see behind me, Miami, we're a warm weather destination. So when it gets nice and cold and snowy in the northern area, we like to bring some promotion of Miami up north. One year we set up in Manhattan with Lamborghinis, Ferraris, and different type of sports cars, and we set it up literally as an Uber service, a Miami Uber service, where you're driving around in these cars that you would see driving around all in Miami. We set up one of those machines where you start grabbing some things and win prizes. We had a pit bull impersonator, so it's fun and something that connects to everyone on a human level, and really makes them sit back and be like, hey, maybe this is a great place to go. They're doing a great job in really capturing our attention. We should leave that lasting impression in someone's memory.
I think for me, if we could have $1 for as many times as this definition has changed, because first it was event marketing and it's evolved. Some people still call it, I think my grandma still calls it experimental. Like it is always, she's like, you're in experimental marketing. And I was like, so close, Graham. But for me, simply boiled down to try and layman's terms it is an experience with the brand. It's an experience with a product. It is an engagement that leaves you with a higher sense of satisfaction, purchase intent. You're thinking about that brand after you engage with it in whatever form, in whatever vertical. Typically, we're going to talk about, feet on the street, one-on-one engagement. It's taken a little bit of different forms this year, but in general, have you had a great experience with a product? If you're talking about it after, recommending to friends, that is our job to move the needle on the brand awareness. Yeah, love doing it.
And I would agree with that. Here at MGM Resorts International, we are all about the wow. And we definitely try to incorporate elements of that, of our world recognized brand of entertainment into all of the events we do, whether it be a small executive meeting for 12 people, all the way up to, huge, massive conferences that we hope to see return to Las Vegas here soon. Rather than later, but I think it's definitely about that feeling and that resignation with a brand. And when you look back and you think about it and you remember your experiences and you take away from the event kind of that memory and that those experiences that make you want to have them again and to come back time after time.
I don't have anything to experience with the brand. I agree, and it's changing more, but that's simple way to look at it.
If anyone has gained anything, if anyone has taken away the overarching point, it is every event changes from landscape to landscape, and it seems like you can't necessarily go off of what's been done before, because it's always changing. And I think that's the beauty of it. That's really cool. Yeah, it's amazing how everyone keeps on top of it and fully is always evolving. It's all about having those questions, right?
I think that's what makes it really fun. Sorry to interrupt. I mean,
No,
when you're doing something different every single day,
Mhm.
it really, it keeps it fresh. And some people enjoy a desk job where you're sitting there and you're working your 9 to 5 and you leave and you come back. But I'm looking around, I see a lot of nodding, is that there's something new every day. You're going to get a phone call from somebody that has an idea, or somebody, whether it's within your organization, on the other side of town. So that's what I think really, at least for me, what I really enjoy about the job is that something new every single day comes up, whether, and that's, yeah.
To build on what Matt said, it's not just about something new. I think it's also about the unique opportunities that you have to engage with people differently based on what those conversations look like, and who you're interacting with, and who potentially could be that, who that event is targeted to and tailored to, and who that art audience is. You just experience so many different types of people going through these events, because they're all so different, that it's definitely something that I think keeps all of us engaged in why we do what we do. It's not always glamorous, the hours are long, but it's all these other experiences that we get to have, producing experiences for other people. And I realize I way overused the word experience in that response. So
No, but you're right. I mean, I think if we all think back on our careers, and probably the folks on the phone too, and if you're in the events or what we're talking about, like, there are some things that just cannot be explained. The phone calls you have, who you meet, where you are at 2 a.m. trying to get something done. Like, it's really hard to articulate, but there's a rush. And I'd argue that we're almost experience addicts. Like, there is something about this that fuels us. And that's why I think this year has been both beautiful and also, when I say beautiful, like the innovation, but tough, because we're in an experience deficit, right? And we crave that. So I think it's why we're here. It's those, I'm looking at you like, what's going to happen next year or July? Like, that is something that is so magical and so beautiful. Like, the whole world watches, right? And that's what we have the honor of putting forth. So I don't think any of us ever take it lightly. It's a pretty cool gig.
Yeah, I think as human beings, right, we crave experiences, we crave meeting other people, and events are beautifully encapsulate that. And to everyone's point, everyone's touched on how it's things you don't even think of, like how many times have we all been to an event where, oh my gosh, like I didn't expect this, or oh my gosh, I met so and so from the other side of the world, or whatever. Like, that's what draws people together. It's almost it's that like X factor of, we all came here collectively for this, and we want to experience this together. And it actually leads really well into the next question. And Julie, I know you touched on it a bit, but in regards to how this year has been, everything pivoting to a lot of more of a digital, even a social realm, how do you see that moving forward? Not just in the near future, for when we're still in COVID times, and those physical activations may be not at the same capacity it once was, but even going forward, when we are back to meeting and greeting people in person, what is the landscape going to look like? Because I'd have to guess it's probably not going to be the same.
Well, I'm looking at the smiles on the faces. I think it's the $1 million question, right? And I think we would pay any amount of money to say July 1, we're coming back, right? No, I think here are some of the facts as I see it. This week is a really big week. Today, even the very first people in the UK got the vaccine. They are starting to be the litmus test on how this rolls out. Thursday in the States, the FDA, the hearing, right, with Pfizer and what happens there. If it's good, rumor has it they greenlight this thing on Friday and we start rolling it out. That's if it's good. And again, eternal optimist here, but just I think we have to be prepared if it's not. But as we're looking at it, I think as our data is showing, Q3 is, I think, when you start to see a return to play in what we previously may have seen. I don't think the words return to normal. It's something I know I struggle to use. I want to use it every day, but it's not. This is our normal. Because if we go back to March 2020, that's not what the consumers expect. There's been so much movement, so much acceleration. Digital has advanced 3 to 5 years in 1 year alone. So when we go back to play in 2021, we have to meet our consumers and our brands in that moment. And just maybe I don't want to take, but the thing I'm excited about is I think our teams, our event teams and our experiential teams are going to lead the way. We are that test. So when health and safety and sanitation, if we don't get it right, the consumer confidence is not going to be there. So how we do it, and I don't trust any group of people more than us. If we can figure out how to ship, the vaccine in minus 94 degrees Fahrenheit across the country, we can do this. So it's just, I think a lot of it is on the events industry, and I'm excited to see how we move.
And I would echo a lot of what you said. And obviously for us here in Las Vegas, bringing people back together is paramount for the longevity of this city. And the city is built on people coming together and sharing in experiences. So for us, at MGM Resorts, we have launched our Convene with Confidence plan, which is a way for us to start to show people how we are implementing health and safety measures into starting to bring people back together. Obviously, our governor has us very restricted right now as to the number of people that we can have at events or in venues and things of that nature. But I think that there is going to be such a demand for coming back into in-person events that the digital components are going to have to be integrated in such a way that they amplify that experience for the attendee in person. People aren't going, I believe that people in general don't like this screen stuff. I mean, I know that we've got my less Zoom, more Zoomies in the background with my beloved chief, but that bringing people together, I think, is what events is all about, and the digital transformation and the digital advancements that have been made are going to be so incredible to help amplify the messaging that we have when we do get to bring people back together, and to streamline processes that I think in some old traditional senses bottlenecked events and created bad experience parts. So I think it's a combination of all of these technology advances and this pent up desire to be around humans again, and to be together and to, have those shared experiences again.
I mean, I agree with Sarah 100%. I mean, we're creatures of habit, and we're very, we're creatures that like to get together with each other and high five and hug and really share those experiences. And I think that I don't think it's a new normal, but just a temporary normal. I mean, I understand everyone's going through a lot, and we're all going to get through this. A lot of our partners are doing great things out there to really keep everyone safe. I can give an example with Hard Rock Stadium, and I see a question here. The brands, outside your own, you feel have done a good job pivoting with an experience. For example, Hard Rock Stadium, they did when they couldn't use the football field, they made it into a drive-in movie theater, and that was one of the first things that me and my wife actually did. Is we drove down to the stadium, came in, drove right on the field where the Dolphins and the Hurricanes play, and on their giant screens on all four corners, we sat there, we watched the movie. They brought popcorn to you. They kind of kept this little square box around where you can get out of your car, sit down, and really feel like you're in a safe, comfortable environment. And they did a heck of a job. And to this day, when they're playing football with about 12 to 15,000 fans in the stands, on the outside, on non-football days, they still have a socially distant movie theater where you can come and sit in like the cabana area. So I think, the Miami Dolphins and Hard Rock Stadium, at least in our destination, have really embraced that community aspect and really put forth the effort to make sure everyone is get there doing something fun in a safe manner.
I can add, and Christina asked a question related directly to what we're talking about, but I do believe there is, we've all sort of mentioned it, still this hunger for human connection. So digital will not ever fully replace events. I think we can all agree on that, but probably everybody's talking a lot about hybrid experiences and their respective teams. And that is a trend I think is here to stay. So digital components of events and of experiential, but absolutely that human connection won't be going anywhere once we're able to safely get together again, which is exciting to think about.
And I'll try to combine, I think, Christina and Avish's. I think couldn't agree more. I think when we do get back from this experience deficit and we're able to reconvene the way we used to, I do think the expectation is going to be higher. So I think when we incorporate digital, when we have a more integrated campaigns, the consumer is going to expect more. So how have we leveled up? How have we tested and learned during this time? And Avish, maybe that's my answer to yours is I admire the brands who've actually made an effort during this time. It may not have all been home runs, but I applaud them for trying different things. You know, one of my clients that we're fortunate to work with is they still needed to get samples out. So they entrusted us to go to food delivery partners. And we, during the first time ever, got through one of the delivery apps and entirely free to consumers, first time ever, something where you could order on your app and get free samples to consumers. But they entrusted us with that to try something new, to get out a new product they had. So I think the big splashes in the, Travis Scott, Fortnite, Beyonce, Pellet, I mean, I could list 20 who I admire, but they made an effort to not just say 2020 is done and canceled, but they put their stake in the ground and did some really cool things.
I would add, I'm a big fan of what the NBA was able to do this year.
Oh my gosh.
And also the Raptors specifically. And it's related to another great question that's come in around social impact, but the NBA was a dominant force in supporting Black Lives Matter. And so were the Raps, and we were super proud of what that our brand, our team, and NBA as a property did to advance that movement and start those really important conversations. And I do think social impact is another thing that's been a positive coming out of 2020, the importance of that in experiences. And I think that was a great question as well. And that is something that we'll see continuing, absolutely.
Yeah, and I'll just, I do think the MBA, I think that's going to be a case study for years to come in colleges when they look back and they say, how did you do that? Fortunate to have some friends who are on the security side of the MBA and just even hearing a peek as to how they change the logistics. It is a marvel. I think we all know that, we appreciate it, but it's a hats off to those, NHL too, of how you had to, what you could do to make people safe. And one quick nod to, I'm just seeing this question come in, but Denai Yelverton, if she's on the line, she in 2020 pivoted when we talk about social, elements and what she did. She had, when things looked to be one way, she had a dream to do complimentary eye care and eye services for those in underprivileged areas as in Chicago. And she did an entire truck of ophthalmologists and those. And so she took it around the Chicagoland area and made that come to life. So a massive, massive heads up to her, because I think dreams still did come true in 2020. It was a tough year for events, but the innovation still was pretty profound.
That's beautiful. That's really cool.
Yeah, it's an amazing campaign.
Absolutely. I see there's a couple other questions coming in. I know we're wrapping up here on our end. I would like to ask, for getting to some more of those, and feel free to have fun with this one, is there any particular activation or campaign or event that sticks out in your mind as a favorite, or one that you just came away from, absolutely loved it? Yeah, I'm just curious to hear about that.
There's so many.
I know. Yeah. Oh, for sure. Look, tough. I saved the toughest question for last, of course.
Do you mean different than they did before? Because I think that's almost like a category in and of its own, like small, super small stuff. Just launched this week. KFC is coming out with a Lifetime movie in partnership with Uber Eats with Mario Lopez and Colonel Sanders. Like, what? But also people are probably going to click into that. So, I mean, that's just yesterday. But like, is it a brand pivot, or do you mean they stayed in their lane, or is it just any?
Oh, just to clarify, I asked like specifically you, like your experiences, if there was a event or anything specifically that you, that you help put on, that you came away from like, this is my favorite event I've worked, or I super enjoyed this one. Like if there, I'm sure there's many that stick out, but curious if you're willing to share.
I have an easy one. Is it, or Julie, did you want to go first?
No, please go.
So I get to work on Canada Olympic House. That's a program with Team Canada, and that's by far been the most unique event. I'm using air quotes because it seems like much more than that for us as a brand. But for those who don't know what that project is, it's our hospitality house at the Olympic Games. And in Pyeongchang, we opened up to the general public. So it's sort of like operating a sports bar to support Team Canada and our athletes for 17 days. And it's unique for me because it was my first project where I worked internationally. So that's been my personal favorite to date.
I don't think that I can, from my career, I don't think I could pick one. I had the fortunate opportunity, like I had some fortunate opportunities in my career to work with some amazing organizations. And I was just thinking about it and I'm like, oh, that event, I'm going through like listing them off. I mean, obviously I loved producing the events of the Sunshine State Games and Florida Senior Games, and working with those athletes and our competition experts and all of that, and then transitioning to my CVB role where I launched with ESPN Events a Division I college softball event that had some of the highest ratings for softball like ever, and to share in that moment and that success, and especially from a women in sports perspective as well. Those things were incredible. To host the UANA junior Olympics and stuff, like it's hard to pick just one because they're all so different, and they all have a special place in my heart, and they've all, like, I don't know, I feel like I've learned from each one, and every event that I get to be a part of makes me want to do another one, if that makes any sense. Like it's that momentum that keeps building, that just keeps you chugging along in this space and in this industry.
Exactly. I mean, while it hasn't happened yet, but Miami is a candidate host city for the 2026 World Cup. Shameless plug right there. Just to have the opportunity to work on a mega event like this, I mean, one of the biggest events in the world, I think, outside of an Olympic Games is a World Cup, and to really, be in the trenches and kind of, I guess we can say, kind of herd cats and try to get all the information together to US Soccer, to FIFA, and to all the entities to really make sure that Miami puts their best foot forward in order to get these games. I mean, Miami is such an international destination that it makes total sense to host one of the most international events in the world here. But just to have that opportunity to kind of be a part of it is definitely really special.
They're awesome. I was like, do you guys need volunteers? Do you want?
Come on down. We can always use volunteers.
Book up the calendar. I'm gonna go with a different.
Absolutely.
There's a few, but I'll say my very first one. I can remember getting out of college, and my first true campaign was a year-long or summer-long activation with Roadway, which is a trucking partner, Major League Baseball, and the Negro Leagues Baseball Museum. And our job was to show, in effect, the humanity and all the sales elements of what Roadway does by partnering with the local baseball team in every single major market. And in doing so, I can remember fresh out of school, it's that first summer, you're working 100 hours, whatever. And I'm sitting with Derek Jeter in nobody else in the Yankees dugout. And I'm just like, this is my job. Like, this is my life, and so much hard work had led up to that moment. But there's so many, like we were talking about earlier, those memories. Like, that's just, we played baseball or softball on Yankee Stadium field. Like, it's hard to erase those. So yeah, but it seems like we all have them, and we're all smiling. So those are good things.
That's incredible. I feel that's
Yeah, it was all good stuff.
Absolutely. All right, everyone. On that note, I think this is a good time. Thank you so much, each of our panelists. Appreciate the wisdom, the perspective, answering questions, all of that. What we're going to do now, like I mentioned earlier, we are going to transition over to the networking breakout rooms. So if everyone looks in the webinar chat, I won't close this down for a second. Please find the Zoom link and we will then get over to that. And yeah, we will see you all on that link. Okay. Thank you, everyone, very much. Appreciate it.
Thanks.